What fact about the opposite sex did you learn embarrassingly late in life? I had to explain to my female friend that when you orgasm you do not ovulate. She is 25 and was afraid of having sex because she didn't want to waste her eggs. Cum is not absorbed by the woman's body but drips out afterwards. My exes used IUDs for contraception that pretty much stopped their periods. At 24, my current GF is my first real exposure to a regular menstrual cycle. One time while getting intimate, she says, by the way, I have a tampon in me. I ask, but what's it still doing there? Well, I thought you use it like a pipe cleaner and then take it out. I thought women wore bras so the milk wouldn't pour out. Edit. Wow, this blew up. Like boobs full of milk. Apparently. Fairly certain I was in high school before I knew the truth. They talked about lactation and sex organs and all of that jazz in health class, but they never talked about undergarments. I mean, why would they? Being a gay male, I didn't really care enough to find out if what I thought was true. I was more concerned about why I was attracted to dudes. I'm pretty sure a female friend made a comment at some point about her little brother who thought that bras were to keep the milk in and how they are really for support, shape, etc. My thought was, oh wow, interesting, but look at his muscles. Damn. The towel wrap thing girls do on their head after a shower, their hair is actually wrapped up in it. For years I thought it was like some kind of towel hat. I thought periods were a one and done type thing, not a monthly ordeal. It made me wonder if my teacher was crazy sentimental when she said her daughters mark it on their family calendar. My girlfriend was killing herself laughing last night because I thought maxi pads stuck to your skin and not your underwear. I turned 30 this year. I had my first boyfriend at 16. Until then, my only exposure to male genitalia had been those illustrations in my biology textbook. So when my boyfriend got naked, the first thing I noticed was that he only had one testicle, or so I thought, because I had always assumed for some reason that you would be able to immediately see the outline of two testicles within the scrotum. I was expecting two noticeable lumps, something akin to a plastic bag with two walnuts in it, but no, all I saw was a round sack. It confused me for a very long time. I honestly thought my boyfriend had only one testicle, yet he never brought it up or even seemed ashamed of it. Although I didn't mind it, I was impressed that he didn't seem to lack any self-confidence. Unlike all the stuff I read online about guys being insecure from having only one testicle, I'm not sure when it finally clicked that he did, in fact, have two testicles. I finally admitted it to him one day. He still makes fun of me for it. He's my husband now. My brother thought women wore bikini tops, etc. because they didn't have nipples and were embarrassed. He was probably 10 when I broke the news to him. Until I was about 7, I thought boobs were just lungs located outside the body. Boyfriend is 28. He thought we carried around little containers of Vaseline to lube up the tampons before inserting them. He also just found out that some tampons have cardboard applicators. He was horrified on both accounts. Isn't that uncomfortable? Already commented this, but he also just found out that maxi pads stick to your panties and not your body, like a giant band-aids. I knew what a vag was, but I didn't know pussy was another name for it. So why did my dumbass ask my 7th grade history teacher in the middle of class? As a child I thought sex was one moment of penetration and then over. Like you roll around and kiss. Then the guy sticks it in once, and the sperm comes out and sex over. I was basically getting ready to have sex for the first time when I learned that the penis in the whole time thrusting. That there's a pee hole and a sex hole. Had a friend who only figured out what a clitoris was in a game of Cards Against Humanity at the ripe age of 26. He was the one judging the cards in a game with 3 guys and 4 girls. Someone played the clit card. He read the card aloud and goes, "I don't even know what that is." Awkward silence ensued. Never felt so bad for someone in my life. Female roommate who grew up in a house with only females. Had a guy over. Guy needed to pee. She remembers there's no toilet paper in the bathroom and runs to get a roll. He says it's okay. I'm just going to pee. She's confused. Didn't realize that guys don't wipe their peens after peeing. She doesn't want you to fix her problem. She wants you to listen to it and sympathize. Okay, so as long back as I can remember, I knew girls didn't have peens. But I thought they just didn't have anything there at all. Like it was just a smooth area of skin, like a Barbie doll, and that they mad from there. But and that's why they had to sit down and use toilet paper when urinating. Eventually I found out the truth. But for years I believed girls just didn't have anything there. Watching One Born every minute, a show about women giving birth in the UK, and asked myself where the umbilical cord went after being cut. I guess I'd always assumed it just sort of got sucked back up into the vagine like the electrical cord on a vacuum. I'm 27. When women are on their period and they sneeze, and blood comes out of the vag, way goddamn late to the party, but I posted this before, and wanted to share again. I used to think my testicles were my unborn kids. Like one day they would hatch and bam, I would have 2 kids. I was always confused when I saw people with like 8 kids, and wondered how he walked before. Till more stuff than I'd like to admit. I couldn't figure out why it's so common for men to pee on the seat and the floor around the seat. Is it that hard to aim? Like, how the frick is this such a thing? Then I had a son and potty trained him. I remember the moment it clicked. He pointed it one way and the pee went a totally different direction. It defied logic. I thought peens got slimy and slippery when men were about to have sex. I have no idea where I got this idea. To be honest, when I was 16 and was fumbling through my first hand/blowjob, I remarked on how soft-skinned and dry his peen was. Women are just as nervous on a first date as I am. Took me until high school to realize that the peen needs to get hard in order to enter the vag. The sex ed we had in grade school was okay, it talked all about the reproductive organs and what they do, but nothing about how actual intercourse worked. I spent too long wondering how the heck a floppy peen was supposed to get inside that small hole. That the tampon string just hangs out there, making a girl look like a party popper. The difference between the vulva and vag. My friend was close to 30 before he realized that the birth control pill did not prevent STDs. He was dating a mutual friend, and she suggested that they both get tested before having sex without condoms. He replied, "But you've been on birth control a long time." That's how I found out it was super common for adult, educated men to make this assumption. Was in my mid-20s and had just finished having sex. The girl had been wearing black tights, and as she was putting them back on, I was like, you know, I never knew tights were like one thing. I thought they were 2 separate things, each of which you put on each leg. And she was like, "Are you serious?" A long time ago in my late teens, a girl asked me really uncomfortable questions and she admitted she was an open book. I asked if she wanks. She said no, girls don't wank. I believed her for the longest time, until I met my ex, which then revealed she did. It was a combination of embarrassment and anger on being trolled. It wasn't until college that I learned that girls could be messy and even messier than guys. The state of the rooms of some girls I knew looked like a tornado had hit it. In my mid-30s, just found out that peens don't have 2 holes. I thought there would be 2 different, you know, pipes for the 2 different fluids. I have a friend who thought periods happened in exactly 1 calendar month. He said, wouldn't it suck if you got your first period on your birthday? Because then you'd be on your period on your birthday for the rest of your life. Didn't know where to begin explaining what's wrong with that. I vaguely knew that some men had foreskins, but I didn't know anything about how they operated or functioned until my late 20s. It honestly just doesn't come up very often in the Midwestern United States. I also didn't realize how rare intact foreskins were around here until then either. The actual vag hole is lower than expected. She quickly corrected me. Thankfully didn't go to low though. Being a young kid, I used to hump my bed to get off. It's because I had Cinemax in my room, and my parents didn't know, so I got to watch Passion Cove all the time. I figured, hey, he's doing this to that pretty lady, I can just imagine she's under me too. Now obviously I was shooting blanks, and for the longest time I thought this is always how it would be. Well, was I in for a surprise the first time I ejaculated. I was so mad that I had a mess to clean up now. I miss the days of rattling them off with nothing to worry about. My wife thought men pull their pants all the way down at urinals and asked if it wasn't weird to see all those butts anytime I had to take a leak. My ex-lesbian 20s thought guys' erections looked like dogs. One of the most creepy images I've ever imagined, tbh. I dated my now husband in high school and had an embarrassing attempt at a first blowjob. I didn't really watch 30th, so I literally just started kissing it, no tongue, and then asked if it felt good. Not really. He still married me. Never knew girls wiped after urinating until recently. I recently came to the realization that women have a little pee hole that they pee out of. I was absolutely gobsmacked when my GF presented me with this information. I spent about a week thinking about how this has never come across in a conversation, or how I was never taught this. I, for some reason, always assumed they peed through the baby exit hole. I'm 26 and thought I was invincible. I now no longer know what reality is. I'm still in disbelief, to be honest. Hi, men's aren't little vag freshness seals. It wasn't until I had a gay male friend late in high school that I learned gay men have anal sex. They don't actually put one's peen inside the other's. Edit. I was apparently not far off on this one. Docking is a thing. Till. Not me, but at a former job had a coworker in his 60s who has been married for 40 odd years. Mentioned he was out because he had to get his prostate checked. Cue female coworker asking if everything was okay. He said yes, but it was uncomfortable. She mentioned she wouldn't know. This guy then tells her the importance of getting her prostate checked, since it's a cancer risk. Now, he's not wrong that it is important, but we had to explain to him that women don't have prostates. This man was married 40 damn years and didn't know this. We certainly could take some educated guesses about their sex life after that. My wife's manager, single male, 56 plus, made a comment 3 years ago that if you get PMS cramps and blood during period, you should see a doctor immediately. The entire office still made fun of him till this day. Learned the difference between tampons and pads. I thought the words were synonyms. God, there is a big difference on application. Having grown up on a TV and movie diet of strong women kicking ass and beating up assailants and so forth, I did not realize that women are significantly weaker than men, on average biologically speaking, and not on an individual basis. When young I was asking these two girls why it took two of them to carry a box I knew I could easily carry by myself, and they acted like I was just making fun of them when I was really puzzled. Also, when dating, it took me a while to realize women generally like to be walked to their cars, because unlike the movies they do not automatically know martial arts and can defeat any man who F's with them. I'm looking at you, CW. The clitoris is sometimes located in my wallet. Dwarven babies just spring out of holes in the ground. I was so ignorant. Women also have ass hair. When a woman in labor is dilated to a 7, they are talking about her cervix, not her pupils. I had heard the term in movies etc for years and made the connection while watching a video in birthing class and embarrassingly exclaimed, "Oh, that makes more sense." Not me, but a colleague. He thought girls had peens and gave birth through their ass. He was a little weird and it came up a few times, and I was really confused the first few times, but quickly discovered that Noon wanted to correct him. He is now a father, so I suspect he have figured it out. Breasts are soft. Being a loner meant I never felt any, and I assumed they're like muscular or something. Not stiff, but firm nevertheless. I learned that men have the capacity to love at 15 over 16 when I had my first relationship. All my life I believed that all men want is sex, and that's the only reason they are ever in a relationship. Once a baby comes, they either continue to stay for the sex or leave because no sex. Raised by a single mother who had a number of crap relationships, and my biological father is a narcissist who was barely there. Later on I found out my mum believed this too. Mum is now married to an awesome guy who is basically my adopted father. Not about opposite sex, but still kind of fits the criteria. I have a friend who has one testicle. When he was born, He had one removed due to birth complications. Urethra wrapped around it, I think. His parents never mentioned it to him, so as he grew, he believed having one testicle was normal. As he got into middle school, other kids kept making jokes about balls. He thought they were funny because of how people referred to multiple testicles and just played it off as part of the joke. In 7th grade, he discovered 30 and realized the men in the videos all have 2 testicles. He confronted his parents in a really awkward conversation afterwards. For those who are curious, the one testicle grew larger to carry the weight of missing the other one. It's roughly in the shape of a gently flattened ball of Play-Doh. A girl I know that I used to fool around with has a 5-year-old son now, not mine. We were talking one day and I don't know why it got brought up, but she called him a little pervert, and that all guys are perverts. I ask why, and she explains that we constantly think about sex at night because we wake up in the morning with erections. She called her 5-year-old son a pervert for having morning wood. I had to explain to her that it's something we literally can't control. Doesn't matter what we are dreaming about, there's like a 99.9999% chance we are gonna wake up with a rager. She still didn't believe me. That women love men as much as we love them. I'd been told I love you a few times, but I always felt like men kinda just filled a role in women's lives. Like men are useful and fun. Kinda like a dog, but it's more okay to shout at us and say horrible things to us. Then I started watching a YouTube gaming show hosted by a long-term couple and later listening to a podcast with an all-female cast. I was shocked at how sincerely they adored the men in their lives. It took a couple of years for me to really believe it. I was 28 when I first experienced anything close to it myself, when I was lying next to the girl I was seeing, and she had this look in her eyes that I really felt said there's nowhere on earth I'd rather be. Macube actually does legit take a while. Girls aren't just freaking around wasting time. As a child, I thought blowjobs were crappy low-level jobs that doesn't pay as much, like in a balloon factory. Girls especially don't like doing blowjobs because it's a job that blows. I had always thought a woman had her period once a month, so I had it in my head that it was like a cell phone bill where it was every month on a specific date like the 15th. The tampons of sizes. Pretty much everything about the hymen. Thank you. Adam ruins everything. Good friend of mine had testicular cancer. Recently another friend made a comment that his wife must be so happy to not have to deal with balls anymore because they just hang there and it must be so much nicer looking. She thought that the entire ballsack was removed and he was just left with a peen. That the balls hang together like best friends. Like, I always thought they were in 2 divided sacks. Oh, and that foreskin is so important for uncut. Read. 95% of my countrymen, Jude's pleasure. That's what happens when you grow up watching American 30th, I guess. Not necessarily the opposite sex, but I was having my boyfriend feel a weird part of my belly button, and he said man they must have pushed yours in wrong, and I was like, apparently he thought that doctors push the umbilical cord in when you're born, and that's how belly buttons are made. Hes 21. It is never appropriate to refer to your pregnant wife, or any pregnant woman, for that matter, as Big Mama. Also, Prigomacego is similarly frowned upon. Dwight, you said we could come to you if we had any questions. Where is the clitoris? On a website it says at the crest of the labia. What does that mean? What does the female vag look like? Well, I was about 35 when I learned that some women enjoy heterosex, even the penetration part. Until then I had been firmly taught that intercourse is only what men want. 35. That women also watch 30th. My friend's ex-girlfriend thought women had prostates. She was a lesbian who learned about sex from /fanfic. 36 meters on Sunday. I learned that toxic shock syndrome is caused by bacteria and not from chemicals in tampons. With all the chemicals we have convinced women that they need to put on and in their bodies, I had just assumed that tampons were poisonous. I didn't know that men ejaculated. I don't know why. I was in for a big surprise the first time I had sex. I was 19 years old. I thought that the vag was in the same place as the peen. So when you had sex it was straight down and not up and in. That men aren't upset if they're quiet. They're literally thinking about nothing. Or what if you crossed a fire-breathing dragon with a T-Rex? When I was 15 I learned that, while that when finger blasting a girl, there is a right hole and a wrong hole, to try to get your finger in. And no, I'm not referring to an asshole as the wrong hole. Periods. I learned next to nothing about periods from sex ed. My boyfriend just asked me yesterday if I ever see my eggs come out when I'm on my period. We are both university students. A friend's boss wouldn't allow her to leave a meeting to go to the bathroom. She needed to change her pad as she was on her period. She asked again. He said no. She said, if you don't let me go to the bathroom, I'm going to bleed through my skirt onto this chair. He said, just hold it in. He was a 33-year-old man who thought women could just hold back the tide with their vag muscles. Till our school systems need better sexual and reproductive education. That women do not pee out of the hole they put their tampon in. I just assumed that was what took them so long. When they went to the bathroom they had to take it out and put it back in again, right? Dad didn't know this either. He's 58. I'm 36 and by all accounts pretty decent at most things 6, but goddamn it if I'm virtually helpless unhooking a damn bra. I suspect I will go to my grave never learning the secret to this puzzle. That the vag doesn't actually stay the width you stretch it to during sex. So just because someone sleeps around they don't have to have a big hole. My cousin, female, told me that she didn't realize that semen was stored in the testicles until she was like 17. She'd always thought that erections were the peen filling up with semen. I mean, if you didn't know any better, it'd make sense I guess. My boyfriend didn't know that girls don't pee out of their vags until like 6 months ago. He's 23. It was cute, but also sad the education system failed him so badly. I read somewhere that woman's period attracts bears. Bears can smell the menstruation. Not the opposite sex, but of my own sex. I watched Robin Hood. Men in Tights is a young child. They have a part in the movie about circumcision. Basically they make a joke that circumcision is done with a mini guillotine. So for years I thought circumcision was cutting off the tip of the peen. In middle school I was in the locker room and noticed a peen with no tip. This only confirmed my suspicion. I assumed he was circumcised, and I was not. In hindsight I realize that the foreskin was covering the tip, and he was actually uncircumcised, and I was circumcised. It wasn't until high school when I told my first girlfriend I was uncircumcised, and she had to explain to me that I was not. Some guy in the locker room and a short bit in a movie were not good evidence to argue my case. But on the upside, I get to tell this story about once a year and it always gets a laugh. Over a span of multiple revelations from 17 I learned what a vag was, and more or less how it worked. I knew dongs and nuts were a guy's thing. But I just thought that there was a smooth patch of skin where a peen would be, and that girls just didn't pee. Which is why they don't think pee jokes are funny, and they always sit down and take forever in the bathroom. Because they only poo. I later learned that girls had this vag thing, and that girls do pee. So I assumed that the vag was the equivalent of the peen, since pee comes from there nothing major. I didn't know what sex was at this point. I had heard of it, but my only understanding was that you hugged and kissed while naked, and I had no connection to babies. Flash forward to my own sister's birth. I had thought that babies were pooped out the butt and grew in the stomach. I told my parents and asked why newborns weren't covered in poo, to which they alluded my understanding of birth may be flawed. I then had sex ed, which helped surprisingly little. I learned that the vag does more than just pee, and babies aren't pooped out, but some things just didn't click in my mind. And even though I learned a lot, I had some misconceptions. Firstly, that women's breast milk was stored in the butt, despite what the name implies. I also thought that men had a secret reserve of milk in their armpits, in case the baby needed emergency milk. The other was that vags had 2 slots, one to hold the baby, and the other to release period goo. And that there was basically a door that had to swing so that both couldn't be open at the same time. The vag one I figured out eventually once I got a better definition of what a period was. But the boob one sadly I learned the hard way much later on when I mentioned it casually during a discussion about it. I had thought until that point that boobs were just masses of flesh for babies to rest on. I'm still not sure about the man milk one though. I think guys can lactate. But where does it come from? Where does it go? Where does it come from, Cotton Eyed Joe? Women ovulate from only one ovary each ovarian cycle, not both. I learned this in my 3rd year physiology class this past year. I'm 19 and heading off to medical school. Women like sex too. I know it sounds crazy not to realize this, but I was raised in a fairly puritanical household and I honestly didn't realize until so embarrassingly late that most women enjoy most of the sex they're having. Everyone wants sex. Seems obvious in retrospect. I know, but that's why I'm here. I hope some insecure 17-year-old young man will realize this and put his mind at ease. The vagina is a lot lower than ya think. I learned that tampons and maxi pads were, in fact, not designed to absorb a clearish blue liquid that leaked somewhere on a woman's body. I grew up in a house with 2 brothers. How was I supposed to know? I was like 25 when my then GF informed me women can only get pregnant during a few days per month. Up until then I thought it was whenever they weren't on their period. Fun story, I'm a med student tarring for anatomy and we were dissecting the sex organs earlier this week. I asked one of the professors for help finding some of the structures so I could show the students what we were looking for. I said, I'm woefully uneducated in female anatomy, which is unfortunate as I'm a female. His response was, it's okay, you'd be surprised the number of guys who don't know it's called a scrotum and not just balls. I didn't know what a vag was until I was 13 and pulled down my first girlfriend's pants and audibly said, you have 2 buttholes. That's cool. Did y'all know that girls don't pee out of their vags? Because middle school young engineer was unaware of that fact. That pee is stored in the balls. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can watch together.